Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Chris Jameson. I am an Alertus implementation project manager here. Some of you I've definitely recognized some of the names in the audience. For some of you, this may be our first time interacting. My primary goal really at Alertus is to help with the deployment of the Alertus solution. That not only means setting up emergency messages, but also working with all the different integrations, endpoints. And then on top of it, I do a lot of training and navigating through the console as well. So today I'm going to kind of harness all of that energy down into just one real focus, and that's going to be just testing the system, viability, what to look for, reporting, and mostly just getting your audience prepared for an alert message. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll go ahead and start off. So we're looking at how to effectively test your mass notification system. Here's kind of what we'll discuss today in our agenda. Why should you test your MNS system, mass notification system, for public awareness, and what type of documentation and analyzation can you get? What are the industry testing suggestions? We'll look at 4 different types of industries here. We'll look at commercial, we'll look at medical, we'll look at schools, and we'll look at information on large commercial. For best practices and for testing at MNS, we'll look at the functionality, fidelity, and human readiness. So what is your audience looking at? What are the volumes and visuals are out there? And how well does it perform when you're doing your test? And then I'll quickly go into the console and show you a couple different places where you can set some of this stuff up. And finally, we'll leave it to some Q&A. So why is it important to test your MNS system? Obviously, testing is critical not only to make sure that the system is operational, but it's also something that's really important to kind of keep in a rhythm. We've noticed over the years in terms of different types of emergencies that have hit that, sometimes, the quickest way to activate the system is simply just, pressing a button. However, if you haven't been, repeatedly going through that practice, if you haven't repeatedly gone through that motion, sometimes you start thinking, okay, where is this button or where is this platform? And so that's one way to kind of think about it. And the other side is just definitely making sure that the operational portion is up and ready. And then just practice. We know that, we do drills for a purpose. For young kids growing up, we do fire drills. Or if you're, on the West Coast, you do earthquake drills or whatnot. Those things really kind of help ingrain the practice of testing, and in the event of emergency, we can mitigate time and loss in that respect. So what are the proper policies, and how do you help ensure that you're sending out all the different alerts that you need it to be? How do you make people aware? I think that's one of the biggest things that we've really done, and to make sure that people are notified correctly. One thing we notice when it comes to these full screen alerts that you see at the bottom of the screen here, it's easy to get oversensitized to the same thing over and over again if you send repeated alerts. This is something that we learned at a hospital down in North Carolina. And letting your team know that these are going to be drills, or these are actual alerts, or these need responses are pivotal to kind of growing your alerting methodology and your testing methodology. With the staff becoming familiar with the alerting process, that's pivotal too. A good example of that is, again, the children lining up to get out the door. We know that in terms of an alert, in a large group scenario, there tends to be a bit of a chaos. And so if there hasn't already been a drill in place or a uniformity in communication, we'll see that there will be a loss of time to try to get everyone organized and moving through a place. And that's really one thing that Alertus kind of harnesses on that facility-based notification, is bringing all of those communication tools together and pointing out that emergency message. But we got to practice. We got to keep moving. The other thing too is that if it's a system that you rarely use, then it becomes a little bit more difficult to string up those, how do I get back into this message? Maybe it's an ad hoc or a customized message. Maybe for this time that you need to send something out that you don't already have in the preset. So you need to go to custom activation and say, hey, I see a suspicious person in the back parking lot. But the time it takes there is pivotal. So practicing that method and going through that is really important. And then the last thing really is, who gets to push the big red button in those imminent threat or big large term scenarios. And that's really important to kind of practice that as well, and communicate within your inner network, who's going to execute the emergency, who's going to call off the emergency when it's disseminated and it's finally all clear, who's going to cancel it, and whatnot. So going through those scenarios and testing is kind of pivotal to making sure that everything is streamlined and smooth throughout your process. The other thing that we've done is, obviously with a lot of our different endpoints that we have out there, from, large digital signages or to our high power speaker arrays. Some of you may have been familiar with this. The public can get notified. I was up in Vancouver at a shipping yard, and we had installed some high power speaker arrays. We did not anticipate that the city of Vancouver would be able to hear the high power speaker arrays from across the bay on a clear day. And so, people were reporting, luckily we were only saying test, but people were reporting, hey, I'm hearing these sirens, I'm hearing these horns. And so, you have to kind of prepare for the larger public to really be notified of those instances. That way they don't get, false reports going into PD and draining resources in your public area, right? Setting the testing days as repetitive. I have some wonderful clients that do it on every Friday. They may test their system at noon. That could be an audible alert that goes out to the whole facility or whole community. Some of them use their alerts to help with communicating a change in time. So if there's a break in the day or something of that nature, they may use the alerting system for that method. That consistency kind of makes sure operational status is good, so that the only time that you don't test the system is in the event of emergency. You want to make sure it's up and going. The standardized testing times is great, mostly because then the general public becomes acclimated to it. The benefit to that as well is that when they hear something that's not on that typical testing time, they can be attuned towards it, and they say, hey, this isn't the regular period of time, there must be an actual emergency happening. And so setting those times really kind of helps. Setting those times really kind of helps with making sure the communication to the public is good, and that they're prepared or also astute to what's occurring. Now, the other benefit to any type of testing is the reporting side. What kind of data can we receive? How long did it take to get to every single endpoint? How long did it take for human interaction between those endpoints? And that's really important. And we capture that as well. We really want to focus on, what does it take to get to the device, but what does it take for the end user to consume it? And so a great example of that is our mobile phones. For some of you who have deployed the Alertus recipient app, you'll notice that the Alertus recipient app can be activated in a second. So as soon as you hit send from the the Alertus console or from the Alertus activator app, it'll pop up onto your mobile phone. But we don't actually record when it gets to your mobile phone, because what's more important for us is when the user interacts with that app. And so what we do is we capture when they actually look at the application and the message, and then we capture when they hit confirm. All right, and the reason for that is really just making sure that we have that interaction and we know, all right, how long does it take for somebody to read this message? Are they reading it? Are they acknowledging it? Or are they being dismissive? So that's also really important, that aspect. The same thing is true when it comes to the desktop computer. We do grab as soon as it pops up on the screen, but we also capture when somebody hits that acknowledge button when they're closing the desktop alert. And that's really important too, because we want to know, did you consume this information? And if you did, you're telling us that you're either in a safe place or you've consumed this, this data. And so that kind of interaction in the documentation is really pivotal. The other side, like I said, is the time it takes to get to each device. Now, for some of your organizations that may have sub 1,000 endpoints, meaning less than 1,000 devices that you're trying to target, we should definitely be seeing those targeting times in under 20 seconds, without a question. Anytime you get above that 10,000 to 15,000 threshold, then you're starting to look at 20 to 30 seconds, just because of when times are checking in and whatnot. Now, if you're in a large VPN environment, that could also kind of change your timing. So when devices can get notified. I've seen devices in a VPN environments, sub 20,000 devices still be notified in around the 20 to 25 second, with a deviation about 10 seconds off of that. So, sometimes they get 35, sometimes they get less to 15. The benefit of running these consistent alerts is noting now you have people working from home and on premise. How often does it take to get to each different devices? Are you alerting the right people in these instances? And so the data really is beneficial for that aspect. When you're targeting groups, maybe you don't want to target anybody who's at home, right? And so you want to make sure that your device assignment rules that are based upon IP, networking, that if your device is reporting a IP that is off your network, it shouldn't be getting any messages. Fantastic. And that's what the device reporting can do for you. Now, one of my favorite tips just in this respect is our desktops can send a hidden message to your entire organization without disrupting anybody throughout their workflow. That's one of my favorite ways to test in a live scenario, because then it can get your heart rate going. Hey, I've just been reported there's this in this drill scenario, just been reported a suspicious person. Go into the Alertus console, send out a hidden desktop message with suspicious person. See how long it takes you to go through this process, so that when you capture all this data, did it alert the right people? Did we send the right message? How many desktops did it get to? And how many, how long was the total process from start of incident to, finish of the messaging? And so the documentation, analyzation of our data is a huge understanding of how we can really, one, grow the system, or two, identify any gaps that we may see. So just for a couple different examples of how we do testing. So again, I mentioned earlier that one of my favorite audio testings that we do is at the University of South Carolina. They have a HPSA system spread around several miles throughout the downtown city center, which is the University of Columbia. Every single Friday, they play the University of Columbia Gamecocks sound across the sirens at noon. For the head of emergency management, a good friend of mine, Mike, that gives him operation status of the system. It gives him an understanding of who's hearing the messages. So from time to time, he'll send boots on the ground to go make sure that, is every single siren going off? Can you hear it in different areas of the campus? Are we dropping or losing power on any sirens of that nature? So that consistent notification every single Friday gives him that audible. Now he goes one step further and he sends silent tests every single day just to confirm that his sirens are up and operational. Now, you can imagine that the school is roughly around 50 to 60,000 students from total population on premise. And that's almost a quarter of the size of the entire population of Columbia. So this system really does affect the public around there. And so everyone in the city can hear this Gamecock going off. Now, obviously, there's a sense of pride there for them when it comes to that sound. But on the other side, it also preps the public for any emergency messages. And so that's a great way to kind of utilize the system in that respect. Now, I know that this says using it for winter and summer breaks is great for students and campuses. You're absolutely right. That is a wonderful way to do it when they're not there, even after hours, when students aren't there, especially for the elementary and the junior high and high school facilities where, the students can be a little bit more involved in that aspect. So definitely testing after hours is great. The benefit here is that you can actually schedule alerts to go off after hours or early mornings, so that when you arrive on campus, you can look at the reporting. The alert will already have finished, and you can get how many devices went off, how many weren't reporting, how long did it take to get to every single device. So that's kind of a great way to do it for the school scenario. On the commercial side here, let me just move this little thing over. On the commercial side here, I chose FedEx Freight as a great way to kind of test the system and letting staff know. We just finished a deployment with them where they are utilizing our system for imminent threat and severe weather. Obviously, they have distribution centers all across the United States. And we set up the system in all different distribution centers. They have active basically active threat buttons that not only notify people at headquarters, people in their regional offices, but also notifies the local dispatch PD that there's an event happening at their facility, all within a push of a button. And for them, that was what's most pivotal. They wanted to make sure that that could happen in less than 5 seconds to notify everybody around. And that's exactly what took place. And so when we finished the testing at each of these different locations, not only do we work with the staff to get them prepared on how to activate the system, we also got them prepared on what to do in the event of imminent threat. I think that's one thing that's commonly overlooked, is that if you implement a active threat button or an active shooter or whatever you decide to call it, imminent threat, the communication to your constituents or your endpoints or your staff or population really needs to be addressed in what they can anticipate to occur. Obviously, some people may look at that big flashy red button and think, helicopters are coming in. And, for the government, that may be the actual thing that's occurring. But for most of us, it's typically just local dispatch or PD that we're going to escalate the issue to or immediately notify. And so that's one thing to kind of keep in mind when we're working through all these different testing scenarios. For them also, they like doing testing after hours. That way there wasn't any disruption in their workflow. Obviously, they have quite a lot of timed engagements to meet. So any disruption throughout their day is incredibly costly. They threw some crazy numbers out for that. So, but we made sure that we could schedule these alerts after the hours, and we can test the system fully, but we also could train all the staff on what was going to occur when they did press this button, should they ever have to. Obviously, we hope that they never do. Another great industrial manufacturing company. This is a little bit of a great example here with Molex, and I like the picture that we have up here because it's reminiscent of the actual facility where there's tons and tons of high ambient noise, meaning that the normal level of decibel that are in these facilities can increase above the 70 to 80 decibels, and that means that it's very difficult sometimes to get clear, clairvoyant voice over top of this without some very, very heavy equipment, loud or powerful speakers or whatnot. So you'll notice that we have different alerting methodologies as well. We always think about alerting in two different ways: the visual cues and the audible cues. We know not everybody hears things the same way or sees things the same way. So making sure that we have both of those endpoints covered is really important. And so in these big industrial facilities like you see here, having the big visual cues. In fact, Molex is located, or this specific example is located in Nebraska, and they threw a statistic at me that said Nebraska experiences a tornado once a month by average, right? And so they have specific lights around their entire facility that goes off indicative of a tornado. That's a blue light. But if you're colorblind, or if you don't see color very well, then you also have these large LED screens up here that you can test with. And so when we're testing in facilities that have high ambient noise, we want to make sure, can we pierce or get above the decibel levels? That's 15 decibels above the ambient noise if you want to know what your goal is to make sure that you can get clear voice. Now, again, once you get up to the 120s, if you're trying, let's say your ambient noise is 105, trying to get to 120, that actually can become detrimental to somebody's health and their hearing. So just kind of keep the boundaries there between that. But let's say you have an office or hospital level, typically that's around 60 to 65 decibel levels. So you're only looking to get around 80. And so in the industrial side, you really want to make sure that you pump the right areas with the right type of audio that you can get, but also the visual alert. So for them, they do tons of visual testing. They also do tons of digital signage because a lot of the machinery that they have there will have digital signs to help monitor, the status of the machinery or whatnot. So we populate those signs. We trigger the overhead lights. We also use the LED marquees and alert beacons to notify the staff, and then they do their daily testing. Now, one other thing that they'll do as well, because of that weather alert, is that they use the Alertus mobile app to notify employees if they should not come into work, or shifts that should not come into work due to severe weather or postponement. And so that's really important for them too as well. So they send out weather warnings or weather alerts to their staff regularly to kind of make sure that they keep that communication high. On the healthcare side, I chose a New Hanover Regional Medical Center because they just did a new type of proof of concept or testing scenario for themselves. Obviously, we're living through a pandemic these days, and so they're prepping themselves for vaccination stations. And so we decided that we were going to do a test with their first responders and their on-premise nurse, where we created a 6-station vaccination setup where we use our alert beacons and our desktop pop-ups and our USB panic buttons to kind of help control the flow of the population of people coming inbound and then people staying and moving forward. This was important for them because they knew that they were going to have to ramp up this same type of vaccination to the general public. In fact, now, I think a week or so ago, they were on the national news for using this vaccination kind of solution inside of a movie theater. And so then, inside the movie theater, they have, different stations, and they have, they use our USB buttons to say, hey, this station is finished. You can send in the next patient. And then, they know that they have about 15 minutes for that person to kind of wait for, they can be cleared to go. And so that type of testing prior with their own nursing staff prep them to kind of handle this large workflow of a population that they're doing now. And they're hoping, I think their numbers are above 500 a day in less than 12 hours. So they're really kind of ramping up the amount of vaccinations they can do. And so I really enjoyed that because they took our solution outside of just alerting, and they started using this mass notification system to help them in this time of need. And so I thought that was a great example of how Alertus can kind of fit into a lot of different roles and a lot of different solutions for you, because again, you just take the word emergency off and we're just a mass notifier. We can really kind of help push a message to each of these different endpoints. And so it was a great way to kind of test the system prior to doing it to a large public rollout. So for best practices in testing, for testing functionality, when we really look for the data here, we're looking for network operability and its integrity. So we're looking for, can it talk to all of our IP or all of our devices over all the ports that we're utilizing? If you're having your desktops check in over 8443, are all of them getting that? Are they working from your VPN? Or are they alienating those if you have device assignment rules set up for that? Power integrity is important for our hardware. So during an alert, are all of the horns being powered up for a high-powered speaker, or are all of our LED marquees lighting up with the correct messages as well? Are they exceeding the power draw on your network switches or whatnot? So we want to make sure that all of those things are the same. And then administrative configuration. So that comes down to, does the button do what you anticipate it to do, right? So if you walk up and press, the large panic button on the wall, or if you press a USB button on your desk, or maybe you trigger from the Alertus console, does the message do what you had anticipated to do in the Alertus system? Remember, the best way to kind of think about that is, if I press this, then my messages do that. They go to desktops, digital signages, alert beacons. They go to HPSAs, so kind of making sure that if statement is built in correctly. During your testing validity, are all of your lights going off, the volumes going off? Or, you're able to really make sure that there's no gaps in your system? Was there large congregations of people but no messages to be seen? So it's important when you do your drills that you walk the facility, which is one of the benefits of having Alertus in your pocket. Again, you can just pull out your mobile phone, use the Alertus Activator app, activate the system from your phone, either standing outside, standing in the facility, and then for the next part, watching the people interact with this emergency message. This is so true. People are absolutely fascinating. They may see something that says evacuate, 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 but then close the message down and think they're going to the conference room for their next meeting. They can completely dismiss it. And so kind of making sure that we see people really engage in the alert, making sure that they follow what the instruction is that you put forth for them, and that they interact with the system correctly, right? Obviously, we know that not everybody sees things the same way and hears things the same way. So we want to make sure that people are consuming this information appropriately, and that the rhetoric that we chose makes sense to everyone that's involved. So a lot of this testing is pretty simple in terms of kind of getting it spun up, specifically with the scheduled alerts. I typically prefer to kind of do that. If you don't already have the mobile app set up, you can schedule the alert to go off in 10 minutes, get with your staff or your faculty or whatnot, walk outside, put them in different positions, and then be prepared for when it's going to go off. We do recommend that you do this often. Obviously, I said that a good colleague of mine down in University of South Carolina, he does it daily for his horns, and then audible, he does it every week. You honestly can't do it enough, only because the system, again, you have the infinite number of alerts to be sent. So there's no cost associated to pressing that red button as many times as you can. But there is a cost associated to not testing it and not knowing if everything's going to go off. And that's a really big part of us. For us, we really kind of push to make sure that you do the best you can to continue that notification, to continue that testing and operation, because the last thing we want, when minutes matter, we want to make sure that Alertus activates in seconds, and that's pivotal for us. So continuously testing is a great way to do that. And then we also know that your system is organic. It's going to continue to get new messages and new alerts. And so to kind of continue that configuration process through everything. I'll go ahead and set up this next demo here in just a second on scheduling alert. This is on the testing the validity. When you see the message, it's great to get some information back from your recipients. Was it easy to read everything on there? Did it take too much time? Was there too much information populated? Did it seem like it came from our organization or from somewhere else? Normally, you don't hear a lot of people say this about their company or the organization, but I normally almost always recommend to every single one of my clients that you put your organization logo here and your contact and security office or emergency management team's information on this other side, so that they can mitigate time to try to find those things, right? In a disaster, do you try to find your directory, or do you try to find something else? Or no, if the information is presented right in front of you on that screen, it makes it easy to capture that and consume that. On the auto alerts, does the tone, or is it easy to consume the text-to-speech? For sirens and strobes, are they all going off? Are they communicating? Or are they also a distraction? Because be mindful, let's say you have our IP/ABA speakers going off that are 8 watts inside your rooms. They do up to 40 languages. If they're going off and they're blaring, but then you also have an alert horn, just it's going to be difficult to hear the text-to-speech at the same time. So for instance, what we normally do is that we may turn an alert beacon on to max volume for an initial duration of 10 seconds. 10 seconds, you get a initial beep, ding, 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 and then after that 10 seconds, it drops to a low beep so that your text-to-speech speakers can overtake that and then have a clear, clairvoyant voice to let everybody know what's going on. It's a similar type of methodology that you see, let's say, in airports. So if they're about to give a message over across the loudspeakers, you'll hear first a chime, dum, 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 and then please pick up the white courtesy phone, right? And so that's the same kind of thing that we need to do in our alerting methodology, which is what we're setting up here, right? Do we do our chime? Do we do our alert tone? And then we populate with our text-to-speech. So that's really testing the validity here and making sure that everything is in the right place. Our human readiness. This is really making sure that we have people out where they need to be to make sure that we can get all the different messages. Are they consuming the data as we have in place? Are the right people activating and the right people deactivating or de-escalating the situation as we see fit? And does everybody who needs to know how to send a message know how to send a message, right? So that if it's your 2 a.m. shift or if it's your 3 p.m. shift, it doesn't matter what time of day that they're on. Do they know how to execute an emergency message? And that's really important. And then also the triage of where does it go, right? Where does this message happen, or how does it kind of consume for each people? Who gets to press these buttons? So in terms of scheduling an alert, I'll just quickly give you an example here. I'm going to log on to our Alertus console here. This is our master console. We use this a lot of times for different types of integrations or nuances and stuff. So you may see some alerts pop up from time to time. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to this configure system. And I'll scroll. If you notice, everything is in alphabetical order. I'll scroll all the way down till I see scheduled alerts. Now, this is under the pre-notion that I've already designed an alert, so a preset alert that I already have in place that I want to test, or a drill that I have in place that I want to test. Notice that we have some live tests going on here. We continuously test our system, but you can see the frequency, right, of how often it goes off, right? And so for us, we just hit this green button that says add a new test alert. Go ahead and name it what I'm going to do here. Now, I already have an existing number of tests in place. So I'm just going to do drill. My start time today. I can decide how often I want it to repeat, either minutes, hours, days, weeks, or months. Obviously is better there. I can even select the number of weeks I want it to repeat, if it's every 2 weeks or every week, right? And I can even go, how many days do I want it to go off? You know, is it every day that ends in Y, or is it just a day at the end of the week that we want it to go off, right? And then I simply just add that schedule here. Now, I'm sorry, I see the advanced here. This is in case that you want to change the rhetoric of this message. So if you want to override what you've already controlled. Now, obviously we have a number of things that you can put in here, system test. You know, we have all clear or anything of that nature that you have, but normally I just leave it to what we have up in place. I'm sorry, just the custom text. So there we go. We don't need to send any override time. Just add that schedule alert. Oh, I forgot we started at 12. There we go. It's a great little catch there. So now we have it live and it's ready to kick off. So I have enough time to get around. This is, you know, 2 in the afternoon here, 2:30. So I'll have enough time to get to a place, notify everybody on my staff, say, hey, this is the alert that's going to go out at 2:30. I've scheduled it every Friday. It's going to go off for the next few weeks. If there's ever an event that I don't want it to go off for any reason, I can either turn it off, disable it, or I can simply delete it as well. Oh, go back to present. So just kind of recap everything. We're going to test your mass notification system to ensure everything is operational. All of our endpoints are communicating. We're going to ensure that that everybody across the organization understands what's going on, and then we're going to understand that what is the emergency message that's happening, and can you consume it correctly. You notice that we went over some of the scheduled alerts there. That's by far one of the easiest way to kind of go off and prepare yourself for ongoing drills, kind of set it and forget it. We also went over the reports, which I think is pivotal to understanding, the growth of the system for your organization, and then also confirmation of anything in that respect. So in the future, if you ever do need to send an alert, having deep knowledge of the reports really helps make sure that everything got out to where it needed to go. And then finally, when it comes to your device assignment rules, this is just to confirm that when you do send an alert out, the message is going to the right people at that right time. I'll go ahead and open it up to any questions that you guys may have. Again, my name is Chris. I'm Alertus Implementation Project Manager. So feel free to reach out. I'll go ahead and check the chat here, see if we have anything.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we have some questions. And again, I just want to say you can submit your questions in the chat box or the question box. So the first question is, are there interactive arrived at rally point safely or similar capabilities that users having received an alert message can respond back to button pushers?
That's great. So actually, you're asking for like mustering reports, right? And that's common for access control or whatnot to confirm that people have exited the building, and once they've exited the building, they can be notified that they're safe. We have 2 different kind of ways to report that. There is not, in your respect, it looks like you're looking more for like a 2-way open line communication. Really what we do is we have that confirmation on the mobile panic button, and then they can also send back in information, let's say if they're not out of the building, and that will give them a GPS stamp of where they are. So a great example of this is, let's say you had a fire in building A, and you want to make sure that everybody out of building A had evacuated. Once they got out of building A, they can, 1, confirm that they've been evacuated out of the building, and then 2, if they're still in the building and they need assistance, they can send in an incident of where they are in the facility. That would go directly to your security team or whoever you decide to get that message, and then they would be notified of where they are. And so that's in our recipient app under our incident notification.
Thanks, Chris. So the next question is, do you have test cases or test scripts for the best practices? In other words, what to test, the sequence to test, expected results, etc.
That's great, Randy. I appreciate you asking that. So we do have a ton of existing test cases for that. Usually we build it specific to your organization and your endpoint. So let's say if you primarily deploy desktops, you won't need the test scripts or test cases for alert beacons. However, we do have a plethora of all of that stuff that we can share with you. It's in our implementation master plan, which, I think Mindra will be able to capture your information here, and we can send that over to you, post this call.
Thanks, Chris. I'll jot down Randy's information. So the next question is, we inherited our Alertus solution and have not had much of a chance to poke around the guts. How can I make sure that setting up these new procedures won't break something our predecessors made?
Absolutely. No, walking into a gold mine is always fun, but you don't know what you can touch. I get it. That's a great way to kind of get acclimated into the console itself. First, what I would recommend that you do is reach out and schedule a time with us specifically, so that one, we can get you into the console. There's no additional cost for any of this stuff, by the way. So we want to make sure that you do get comfortable and confident with the system, and you don't push the wrong red button per se, right? The other thing I want to make sure that before you get in there, that you have access to the application. So if you do have access to the application, you can look at where these emergency messages are going by going to the configure system tab and going down to the preset alert section. All right. In the preset alert section, you'll be able to see the emergency messages. You'll be able to see the icons of what devices are going to be notified. So you may see a picture of a desktop, you may see a picture of an alert beacon or whatnot. And then you also should see the groups that they're targeting. Now, if you want to know who's in those groups, which is typically the next question to ask, you can go up to the top corner and hit reports, and then scroll down to group membership. Once you get to group membership, you can see in any of the devices, including alert beacons, IPAVAs, speakers, or desktops, all in that scenario. I do, however, recommend that you do set up time, again, with either anyone on my team, implementations or support, and we can confirm exactly what each of those individual buttons may do, and then also what you may want them to do. Now that you've inherited it, you get to kind of decide, what is the next step for myself, and what do you want for that organization. So that's a great question.
Thanks, Chris. And I'll take the last question. Are there training courses available for new operators and administrator?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's actually really important that you separate those two things, because that's exactly how we usually look at training. We have administrators who are business owners of the application itself. That's typically sometimes our IT staff and whatnot, who are going to make sure server is up and running. Unless you're on our SaaS solution, which we're managing as well, then you don't have to obviously worry about that. But if you have this application installed on premise, then yes, we definitely would make sure that the administration of training is separated from, and what you use as our operators or our dispatchers or our button pushers, right? The reason for that is that we scale the training specifically to those individuals who only need to know how to activate and cancel an alert and then look at a report, where your administration staff would definitely need to know, how do I make sure that the emails are going out correctly if there's any devices down? How do I change anything? Maybe I want to add LDAP, or maybe I want to delete users or delete desktops off. We'll definitely have specific training for that. I do have a documentation for you that we can send as well. So I'll get that over to you. I think it's Bridget. Make sure that you have both the administrative guide and the dispatcher's guide. We do have some videos for those things, but I do recommend that you spend some time with an Alertus specialist can help you with that.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Jameson. And I wanted to thank all our participants for joining our program. Please fill out the survey on your way out to help us better serve you. I hope to see all of you in 2 weeks on February 17th, where we'll talk about how to set up user controls and groups. And if you have any questions or additional comments, please feel free to contact your respective account managers or support. And thank you again for joining, and we look forward to hosting you again soon. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks, you guys.